All right, it says that I'm live. Now, welcome to Zero Hour, Wake the Fuck Up, episode Pnaach. Pnaach means five in Bengali. Uh, the first video, someone called and someone came. The second video, I think at the very beginning, I farted. So just to be safe, I'm just starting over. And for full disclosure, I'm telling you why. I wanted to tell you, before I say and go into anything, that the chances that Mr. Trump remains in the White House past January 20th is exactly zero. The way that the American electoral system works is that voting is a right that is administered and allocated to states. To that end, the federal courts and the federal judiciary, legislature, or the president of the United States, neither of these three branches of the federal government have any jurisdiction unless there is specific violation of federal election law, which is the reason why now you would think that Department of Obstruction Secretary William Barr has unleashed his forces, which I think is a crock of shit. Because if you look at the language of what he wrote, he said have to count all the votes, and I mean he's followed the letter of the law in his direction. Now, if somebody is derelict in following those directions, maybe they'll get overlooked, and maybe that's how they'll find votes in a trash can or up Junior's ass. I don't know. And you'll see that the tone that I have right now is markedly more snarky and full of assholes / opinions. Because I'm watching from afar as this creep, predator, liar, cheat, fraud has been successful in duping so many people because he has tapped into their fears and their dreams. So he can give them the false promise of fulfilling their dreams by manipulating their fears so they cling on to him. And to that end, they'll do anything. And to the political people in positions of power who are towing the line between legal vote, every vote is presumptively legal until proven otherwise, on the same way that every person is innocent until they're proven guilty. So yes, you have the right to go and check. Go check. No one's saying no. Public court documents show that judges have asked whether whether Trump campaign officials were allowed into the polling places where these suits have come up. And Trump's lawyer said yes, and the judge couldn't figure out why they were there. So they've taken 10 cases up from last I checked, and the Trump campaign is 0 out of 10. First of all, they have to go to state court because they haven't found a specific federal election law that's been violated. That's why they're sending, that's why the Department of Obstruction Secretary William Barr is sending his obstructionists to look. Now, if he was the Department of Justice Secretary, Attorney General William Barr, then he would have done so whether or not it was directed, and it would not have been politicized, and it would not have been, it just would have been part of the process if it's a contentious election. And the numbers are close. By the way, not anywhere close to where they were in 2016. Which brings me to, I'm going to read you the numbers really quickly. As it stands right now, which has been updated by these websites, they're live updating. So I'm going to go by in order of how much Mr. Trump has pushed down or hated on or gone after. So the first comes New York Times. According to the New York Times, Joe Biden has 279 electoral votes and Donald Trump has 214. That is 1-4, not 4-0. In terms of popular votes, Joe Biden has 76,166,191, which is 50.6% of the electorate, the voting electorate. Donald Trump has the popular vote of 71,534,093, which is 47.6%. So that's a 3% margin, which I call the threshold. That kind of gives you an estimate. It's roundabouts, 3.1, roundabouts of ensuring that the party that has the 3 plus percentage lead in a general presidential election gets the electoral vote. And the electoral college and the electoral vote is something that we're going to have to talk about. You know, we can reform it. And my voice is squeaking now because I don't know, I've been talking and I've been screaming at the screen, and I've been doing this literally full time, and no one's paying me but myself with, you know, pats on the back. But this is, I feel, my duty. I don't know. I think every single person who's up in arms about it right now, they feel that it's their duty to their democracy. And every single person who's out there supporting Donald Trump is doing so at the behest of Donald Trump, either because they have been duped into thinking that their dreams are going to come true, or they're racist. And Donald Trump has been able to tap into the fear of that. Or they are extremely greedy, and the stock market going up, and Donald Trump claiming that it has anything to do with him whatsoever. Stock markets are not dependent on a person. They're dependent on stability, on everything else. Other than, maybe he can wobble it, but he's a wave in the ocean. In the open ocean. So he's been able to tap into your fears of not having enough money, or fears of thinking that, you know, other races are going to come and take away your jobs, when none of those things could be further away from the truth. You know, those are shackles on your mind, and he's been able to do that. And at this point, he is asking you to trust him over a 240-year social experiment and government of us, by us, for us, that has failed us many times, but that still has hope. That doesn't find reasoning in putting children in cages, or instituting a Muslim ban by executive order as their first order of business, or insulting women and service members, and having really done nothing substantive for 95% of the American people. So I'm not convinced that most Americans, I'm definitely now not convinced that most people are not racist, because Joe Biden won by a margin of 3 and growing percent. Don't worry, I'll get to the other ones. I'll get to the other accounts. I just said New York Times now. I have some more. Uh, so, and now I've lost my train of thought. Whatever. Let me just go to the other one then. So that's three. Okay. So the next one is PBS. According to PBS, Joe Biden has 290, which is 90, not 19, electoral votes, and Donald Trump has 214. That's 14, not 40. Joe Biden has 76,343,332 votes. And Trump is trailing at 71,444,567. Okay. And now we're going to go to Fox News. When you go to foxnews.com, by the way, once the website loads, the very bottom, you will see an affirmative statement by Fox News and News Corp, clearly, that Joe Biden has been elected president of the United States. And Fox News has Joe Biden at 290, which is 90 electoral votes, and Donald Trump at 214, that's 14, not 40, electoral votes. Joe Biden's popular votes are at 343,332. I'm surprised I had it right all this time with all these numbers. And Donald Trump is trailing that with 71,444,567, which is the same thing as PBS. I think they're tracking it with the Associated Press report. New York Times has a different count because New York Times is one of those very few news agencies that doesn't get a lot of its general news and broad spectrum news through Associated Press, which hires a large pool of reporters to go out and report on stories, which are then administered and sent out to all news organizations. And New York Times doesn't do that. New York Times has its own pool of reporters that goes and investigates. And that's why New York Times asks you to subscribe. If I could afford it, I would. If you can, please do. Same thing with PBS. It's a public station. Fox News requires no help whatsoever. So those are the numbers. Now, let me just talk to you briefly about why the chances of Donald Trump staying there past January 20th is exactly zero. First is jurisdiction. All these cases happening that is a violation, that they're claiming all these voter fraud and this and that. The reason why Bill Barr went down, I went over this, right? I don't know if I went over this in this video. I think I did. Oh, God. I'm committed to doing this completely unscripted, and I'm committed to smoking a lot of weed while doing it, and I'm committed to also continue informing you as much as I can, so just bear with me, okay? It's not like I have a studio or anything to do this. I'm doing this on my computer, and y'all got nothing better to do anyway. The world's shutting down again. Give it a couple of days. a couple of weeks, maybe a month. But we're going to have to log down again. So the federal courts can only come in if there's a federal violation of a federal election law, or if there's a constitutional question about how a voting thing has been conducted. There isn't a constitutional question as yet, and there isn't any violation of federal voter law, election law, and voting law. Now that investigations are going to happen, they're going to check, they're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I encourage that. Go ahead. You know what that's going to do is that it's going to just clarify and polish for Mr. Trump and all of his cronies that the democratic process just works, and that Joe Biden did win by overwhelming numbers. And the margin is going to increase, and it's going to get past 5 million, at least 5 million votes that Joe Biden's going to have more than Donald Trump, which is 2.1 million more than Hillary Clinton got when she beat Donald Trump in the popular vote. That is the truth. That is history. So another reason why, so until they get to federal court, there's no way they can go to the Supreme Court of the United States. So it's not that easy to get to the Supreme Court of the United States. So there are a lot of courts that they have to get to. There's a lot of money. If they're going to go after every single local election in every single one of these states that they're contesting, that is hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits in hundreds and hundreds of local courts all across the country. And you bet the Biden campaign has the money to keep on going. But the Trump campaign doesn't, because the Trump campaign is sending out these advertisements to their voters and followers to give money to clarify voter fraud, but instead they're using 60% of that for paying off campaign debt. So he's biding time, picking up money from his followers to just leave them there, leave them hanging, and then go out of the governance paradigm and keep on attacking it. And these people will slowly realize it, and the cult size will decrease. But by then, he will have paid off all his debts and slowly move somewhere like the UAE. You know? Or Panama. Or Saudi Arabia. Or another jurisdiction that doesn't have extradition. And there's one that comes to mind. I think it starts with an R, and it has this person that's holding it captive, and his name starts with a P. And when I say P, I don't mean urine, but might as well be, you know. So so there's that court part of it. The second part of it is the reason why these cases are going to get dismissed until there is evidence that there is voter fraud or some side of violation of state law to take it to state court, or violation of federal law, or a constitutional question somewhere in there that raises it up to the federal court circuit. And then the federal court circuit has to go through the evidentiary fact-finding court of the district court, and then up the appellate process, and then up to the Supreme Court. That is how cases work. That is how evidence-based cases work, because now the Trump campaign becomes the petitioner in a case saying that the entire election apparatus of the United States, of these battleground states, only in the ones that he's winning or could be winning, which is dwindling, by the way. At this point, the only one that he's going to conceivably win is North Carolina, according to Fox. And if you look at this map, I don't know how you think this wasn't a blue wave. Okay, fine, it wasn't a blue wave. It was a sea level rise. Because the map that Fox has on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado in the blue, with Nebraska in stripes. Then you have Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan. Then you have Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, part of it. Maryland is stripes. Then you have Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. I called Maine. Oh, no, Maryland is completely blue. Maine is the one that's striped. And DC. DC, by the way, about 90% voted for Biden, as opposed to in Wyoming, where about 70% voted for Trump. So if you go by that metric, Biden, in his biggest, strongest base, won by 90%, 93%, whereas Trump won his strongest base by 70. Yeah, just a little tidbit out there. So the margins aren't close. The numbers in Georgia it's not that close. Biden is up by 12,000 votes. In Arizona, Biden is still up, despite all of this hoopla about confusion about count the votes and stop the votes in different states. He's still up. He's just taking off in Pennsylvania. He's now up in Pennsylvania by over 35,000 votes. So where is he going to go? How much is the margin of victory for Joe Biden keeps increasing? It is nearing 5 million votes. So at which time will they concede? Because no matter what you say about the Senate Majority Leader talks about, Senate Majority Leader sits there and talk about don't lecture us. I'm sorry. Hillary Clinton, despite having a 2.9 million vote popular vote lead, conceded the next day. What realm of egotistical audacity do you think this person has if he's going to just sit there despite his incestuous channel of Fox is the one that has him more behind, with Joe Biden more ahead than New York Times. You count the vote, you stop the vote. I mean, you're making a mockery of the American electoral process. You're making a mockery of every single person who's come before you, who sat in that chair. And I'm talking to you, Donald Trump, you fucking idiot. You're making a mockery of these institutions that have made America the leader in the world. And we can be leaders, we can be the best leaders by holding each other strong instead of stamping each other down, or not each other, stamping others down, because at some point there's no one else left just to get to the top. You're going to be standing atop a lot of dead bodies, and those dead bodies will rot, and you will at one point fall, which is exactly what's going to happen to Donald Trump. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about exactly why these cases are getting dismissed by state courts. In federal court, there is civil procedure, which is how court cases go through the process of going through the judicial system. And there's a rule called Rule 12b-6. At the very beginning of when a petitioner comes to court and they present a case, and the respondent has their case to present as a counter, the claim and the counterclaim and whatever. I don't know the names. It's been like 12 years since I've last touched the law. But I'm up on constitutional law, and these process things remain the same, especially something as critical as Rule 12b-6. So Rule 12b-6 is a rule that states that at the end of every single plea for a trial and for a case to be heard, at the end of their argument, the respondent's attorney must, otherwise it's considered malpractice if you don't do that, I think, or should be if that's not the case. Says, Your Honor, the defense or the respondent now moves to dismiss the case upon the basis of Rule 12b-6, failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. That's the federal rule of civil procedure, and I think that remains 12b-6 because I haven't gone to it in a long time. Every state has an equivalent to this rule. And if there is no evidentiary finding by the judge hearing that case, that there is a foundation to go through with that trial process or that fact-finding process, then the case is dismissed. So what Donald Trump is asking judges to do is just forget the law and say, no, we're going to let this case through. It's so ironic because he's been through so many legal proceedings, but he doesn't understand the fundamentals of how the legal process works. Or he thinks that he can manipulate it. Maybe he has for this many decades. But the thing about the American election system is that everything has been transparent and is transparent. Voter fraud does happen, but it happens at such a minuscule level that it cannot even be picked up and cause a local election, let alone a state election, to have to be redone. If you can think of any American election in the last 50 years that has had to have the whole thing redone, forget about presidential election. Please write about it, talk about it, tell me about it. You know, I'm talking and I don't know who's listening and who's going to listen to me, but the point is that this is all I can do right now. And there are many things that all of you can do right now, but none of it should include violence. And all of it should include you wearing masks. And it is a time for you to assert that you fired him. It is not acceptable when a boss fires an employee for that employee to just squat. And now I'm going to get to the fundamental of it. The reason why, most specifically, that this is a point of concern, and I'm learning about this as we go along, and I'm informing, is that, sorry, I'm over drinking water or over smoking weed or something. I'm in a flux at this moment because I've been doing this now for a week, and I feel like, Steve Kornacki's ghost is like haunting me or something. He's astral projected because clearly he's alive. Now, there is a process in which a certain executive branch opens a mechanism that allows federal money to flow into the Biden transition team so Biden is able to hire people for the transition. Now, mind you, Biden has been doing this already because, like I said, Biden has close to $1 billion in his campaign fund. Because I think they were already foreseeing this was going to happen. Joe Biden was sitting next to Barack Obama the moment that American SEAL Team 6 killed Osama bin Laden. Don't forget that. He went against that. He was the only vote in the room that said no, but you should, or was he? I don't know. Whether yes or no, both him and Hillary Clinton, they were both there. So, I mean, God, I lost my truth again. Okay. So this mechanism of transition, he was war gaming, and therefore they know, so they have the money. So they're going to transition. They're going to keep on getting all of their ducks in a row, and it's like getting ready for an exam. And on the day that exact day comes, it'll happen. And on the other side, the current lame duck administration wants to stonewall that process and has not allowed that flow of federal funds to come in so that Joe Biden can full-fledgedly move into transition. Mind you, whether he actually goes out and concedes or not important. He doesn't have to. We don't need him to. We already know he lost. I mean, numbers don't lie as much as he thinks they do or wants them to. So you have to look at it in terms of, if he just sits there and if say December comes along and he's still there, the certifications have happened, the courts have spoken, and he's still there, and he's still not, at that point, the last resort would be the Speaker of the House, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, to say, I'm not going to sign a stopgap funding bill. I'm going to shut down the federal government. And federal employees have to consider that if they are to worry about their long-term job security, they have to worry about the government standing. And the government won't be standing unless there's a peaceful transition of power. So instead of griping for any federal employee when the government is shut down, if you're griping, then consider that. You're griping about a month's pay when what's at stake is your entire life's security. That includes your job, that includes your retirement plan, that includes the security of your family, everything. So if government has to be shut down, then government will be shut down, because that government, that stopgap bill would be funding up to January, would be for the government that is incoming. So shut it down. Who's going to pay all the employees of the federal government that's working for the executive branch? Who's going to bring Mr. Trump's food? Who's going to wipe Mr. Trump's ass? Who's going to pay for the White House's electricity bill? So let him stay there for a month with candles on. Let's see how long he can squat. And then when January 20th comes and the Secret Service detail and every other department has lined up behind Joe Biden, the federal government can just go in, take one of those things that what are those called? Barrows, and just take him out. And then we can turn the lights back on, fumigate the place, sterilize Washington, D.C., and start. I'm giving you these outlandish things, it might sound like, but, this is all I can do. And I implore you to think about all the different ways in which you can help. But I also want you to understand that the people who have voted for him, I'm convinced that maybe 10, 20% of them are racist. Maybe. I think a majority of them are fearful, and a majority of them have good reason to be fearful. Because he can get under your skin, and he can really make you believe that these fears are real, even if they're not, by making a mountain out of a molehill. And remember, when he does that, he's calling you an ant. So I I think I talked about in my previous videos about the elections, about my experience in West Virginia. Uh, I believe in the American people. I think that a vast majority of American people are not racist. I believe that a majority of Mr. Trump's voters voted for him because of fear. I think a small percentage voted because of uh, greed, and I think the other small percentage, voted because they are racist. But racism is a fear. It's the assertion of supremacy is fear because you presume that somebody else feels the same way about you, which is not true. Uh, we were born equal. Of that, I'm ever more convinced. And I think people in power become nervous when they see that the masses realize what they're worth. So I want you to hold that to be true, that you are valuable, that you are important, that your vote matters, that even when no one sees you, you're important. No one sees me, and I am fucking important. So keep doing your work, keep doing your duty, and make the love of your country an action propelled towards that love of country. Also be part of that duty. I love you. Mask up.